I credit Promontory with being, the reason I came back really at all. Promontory is the most recent, addition to the kind of Harlan family domain. The vineyards themselves, or the wet land where the vineyards are, is a place that we had our eye on for almost 25 years.
And for people that don't really know too much about Napa and its history, what do you want to communicate?
There are some unbelievable wines, 40s, 50s, 60s, California. That's one area where I would encourage folks to explore is looking back in time and at some of those great California references.
It's 50 years on from the Judgment of Paris, and Bordeaux is still very much part of the conversation, yet Napa has its own identity in its entirety. And what would you say is the biggest misconception around that?
And I think this was what my dad realized when he put together the 200-year plan is like, hey, if we really want to compete at that highest level, if we really are driven by this desire for our wines, for a wine to be welcome at the table among the finest wines in the world, we're not going to be able to accomplish that in one generation.
The way that you guys are really, your focus on all the different parcels and your winemaking and how those kind of tweaks over time, and it's very exciting. But yeah, the next 5, 10, 200 years.
Exactly. Well, we're sitting here at Promontory Winery in Oakville, kind of in the hills on the western side.
And tell me about, obviously, your father created Harlan Estate, and now you have Bond and Promontory. Can you talk me through a little bit about the history and where Promontory is today?
Of course. So Promontory is the most recent, addition to the kind of Harlan family domain. That being said, it's the vineyards themselves, or the wet land where the vineyards are, is a place that we had our eye on for almost 25 years. It's a place that, my dad actually discovered while looking for the Harlan Estate property in the early 80s. It took us a long time to finally capture the land that would become Promontory. But yeah, so even though it's the most recent kind of piece of the puzzle, its story does trace back quite a long ways. So, Harlan Estate founded in 1984, Bond founded in 96, and Promontory in 2008. Each kind of, I guess, about 12 years apart.
Yeah, and I know you worked in tech and then decided that you wanted to come back in and work within the family and work in wine. I know Promontory, even though it's 100% cab, there is a real kind of interesting layer where you guys really do showcase what makes Napa special, and it's not always communicated.
When we first purchased this property, we weren't exactly sure what we were going to do with it. We thought maybe this would somehow fit within the umbrella of Harlan Estate because they're quite close in proximity. They're only separated by a small strip of forest. But once we started working with the property and making wine and really understanding the character of this place, it became very clear that this was, first of all, very different and really deserved to have a voice of its own. And so we felt that really it deserved its own team, its own winery, its own identity. It really, when we talk about the wine itself, and here's this Cabernet that does not feel in many ways like what you would expect from Cabernet. It really comes down to the geology. I mean, of course, the soil is very important, but we have a little island of metamorphic rock under vine here in Napa Valley, and really in a region that is dominated either by volcanic or sedimentary soils. So all of a sudden, having that third geologic formation, just a small island of it under vine on our property, gave us maybe that freedom to think a little bit differently. But more than that, I think inspired us to really want to understand it and kind of follow what we were discerning where it was trying to lead us.
So even though it's 100% cap, there's all these almost like little micro parcels, and it's in such a special place up in the hillside. So can you talk me through how you even approach that within your winemaking style?
Yeah, so one of the interesting things about metamorphic rock is that it's very, very heterogeneous. And, the old adage in wine of, soil can change very, very quickly in very short amount of area is maybe compounded with metamorphics. And we were finding that, first of all, it would change even between vines that were like next to each other. But each parcel of our vineyards each block is kind of surrounded by forest. Each one, so we have these little islands of vineyard on this very steep, very wild, forested hillside that's completely hidden from view. And so one of David, our winemaker, David Cilli, one of his challenges first was trying to split this place up into coherent, blocks that we could, give the attention necessary to farm them as kind of individual places, but still feeling like they all really were part of this contiguous, had this contiguous character. So of our 80 acres, we've split it into, I think every time I ask him, he's like added a few more blocks, but
I know when I was saying to him before, it was
in these tiny little parcels that we kind of treat differently.
Yeah, and when you look at that, it is definitely more Burgundian in terms of its style, but it's 50 years on from the judgment of Paris, and Bordeaux is still very much part of the conversation of Napa, yet Napa has its own identity in its entirety. And what would you say is the biggest misconception around that?
Well, I think Napa Valley as a region is starting to come into its own. We're a very young region by most comparable accounts, but I think we're starting to emerge out of our kind of adolescent stage where we're no longer kind of emulating those practices or those wines that have achieved incredible status in the old world. And I think now we're gaining this confidence to really start forging our own paths, and because I'm really excited about that, and I'm speaking for us, of course, but I also see this starting to happen in other places, and I think it's really important for a region to really embody that and really kind of get behind that. I think it's an important part of the maturation of a young region.
Yeah, and when you look at the last 20 years, I think there is that notion that a lot of like Silicon Valley and people that have done well have come to the valley and kind of tried to make a quick buck. And then there's just been all these massive commercial wines that are emulating that very big kind of Bordeaux style, and they're pretty consistent across the board. So I feel like with this, like, talk to me through what you think this next wave really is and how Napa should be talked about.
I mean,
just all the big questions.
I always hesitate to speak on behalf of Napa Valley. I can speak a little bit more, directly about kind of how we're approaching it. I don't follow the waves maybe as closely as I should. It's not really some of the things that we think about. And we're
You're
kind of
generational.
Yeah,
What a 200-year plan.
Yeah, that's kind of what we started with.
It's legacy embodied.
We're trying to kind of build our own, forge our own path. And as long as other people are doing that as well, I think we're going to be in a good place. Or at least we will further the credibility and the accomplishment of our region. I couldn't tell you what everyone else is doing, but I can tell you what we're doing. And yeah, it's really about, and it's things that you can't speed up. It's like understanding your particular piece of land, which it just takes time. It does kind of, to do it at the highest level, takes more than one generation. And I think this was what my dad realized when he put together the 200-year plan, is like, hey, if we really want to compete at that highest level, if we really are driven by this desire for our wines, for a wine to be welcome at the table among the finest wines in the world, we're not going to be able to accomplish that in one generation. Like, we need to build a framework for, and really a culture that can set us up for success in the long run, and something that can persist through generations, because we really feel like to do this at the highest level, you can't just do it in one generation.
Yeah, and I have to ask you, obviously, your dad, Bill, and there's this, I mean, when you're looking towards the future, there's that balancing that legacy and then kind of forging your own path. Do you feel like that is with like some of the projects like Promontory, or where do you see the future going?
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest, the reason I came back to the family business or to the wine business at all was Promontory. And, my dad founded Harlan Estate and then Bond, but Promontory was the one that I got to really see from the ground up. and be a part of not just kind of executing, but actually kind of weaving that vision and putting together that plan. And that was always really important to me. I never thought I was going to have that in wine. Maybe a symptom of having like a really strong visionary first generation, founding generation. But Promontory is where I was the first area where I saw that freedom to really follow the path that I felt was the most inspiring or exciting or worthy. So I credit Promontory with being, the reason I came back really at all.
Yeah. And for people that don't really know too much about Napa and its history, what do you want to communicate?
One of the things that I've been really trying to do myself, and what's been really exciting, is going back and starting to drink some of the old California references, 40s, 50s, 60s California. There are some unbelievable wines, made in those early days. And in a way, that's incredibly one of the most inspiring things, and one of the maybe open questions that a lot of folks that aren't familiar with California or Napa Valley have had is like, how do these wines age in the long run? Because I think there's a certain feeling, and we would agree with it, that especially with Cabernet as a varietal, like if you want to play at the highest level, your wine it's important that your wine is able to age. I'm not saying every vintage is going to be like a 80-year-old, 80-year potential wine, but at least it has the building blocks to be able to age very gracefully, over time. So that's one area where I would encourage folks to explore is looking back in time and at some of those great California references.
Yeah. And what excites you about the future?
I mean, we've been in business now. Promontory has been 17 years. Our learning curve remains incredibly steep. We have a 5-year release cycle between our vintage and release. Yeah. So we have 5 years in the cellar of wines that and charting an evolution that people aren't even aware of. And so there's this like frustration and impatience where the wines that they're seeing is kind of our point in time and evolution like 5 years ago. Mm. And if I could just drag them into the cellar and show them the next few data points, that would be that would be so much fun.
You could drag me in the cellar anytime. But looking at your 23 and 24, and here we're having, the 19s and 21s. There it really is. It's and the way that you guys are really, your focus on all the different parcels and your winemaking and how those kind of tweaks over time. And David, it's very exciting. But the next 5, 10, 200 years.
Exactly.
It's definitely the long-term vision. So thank you very much. And before we go, what do we have?
Yeah. So we pulled a few wines other than what we tasted in the cellar. We've got the 2021 Promontory, which is our current vintage in the market. 19 Promontory, and then we make a little bit of a wine that we call Penultimate from the Promontory property. And it's from the vineyards that have graduated from being kind of in the young vines, and they're almost ready for inclusion in kind of finding their place in the Promontory blend, but they're not quite there. So it's we call this wine Penultimate because these vines are at their penultimate stage of.
And you can drink them a little bit younger, right?
They tend to be a little bit more expressive.
As a woman who is not very patient, it's beautiful. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks, Mackenzie.